Cursor's deployment inside victim networks by ransomware groups shows how widely the AI coding tool has spread through the Musk stack. This is SpaceX Daily, episode 82. A new rendering released by SpaceX depicts the Starship V4 upper stage at approximately 70 meters, only 1 meter shorter than the super heavy V3 booster at 71 meters. The near-equal stack heights alter the vehicle's center of mass location during ascent and catch attempts. Observers noted the change could affect aerodynamic loads and tower interface geometry. The image originates from an FAA filing and an accompanying X-post. The updated proportions reflect ongoing iteration on the upper stage tank design ahead of future flight tests. The next static fire tests will validate revised stack frequencies and control bandwidth. The U.S. Space Force is extending Starshield connectivity to additional military aircraft platforms. The move builds on existing Starshield contracts that already supply secure broadband to government users. No specific aircraft types or contract values were disclosed in the announcement. The expansion keeps Starshield on a separate hardware and spectrum path from the commercial Starlink constellation. Starshield continues to serve national security missions distinct from the commercial constellation's direct-to-cell and residential offerings. xAI closed a new funding round that adds several $billions to its balance sheet. The capital will support continued scaling of the Colossus-class training clusters. No valuation or lead investor details were released. The round follows earlier 2026 raises that funded the Memphis supercluster build-out. Additional capital positions xAI to increase training throughput ahead of next-generation model releases. An affiliate of the Aurora ransomware group used Cursor to map and script operations against more than 20 target organizations. The activity demonstrates how the AI coding assistant can accelerate reconnaissance and exploit development. No specific victim names or successful breaches were confirmed in the reporting. The incident adds to growing documentation of AI tooling being repurposed by threat actors. Cursor's agent features appear central to the affiliate's workflow. Russian-speaking cybercriminals used Cursor to plan and partially execute intrusions against at least 7 companies in the EU and United States. One operator ran the agent inside 10 victim networks to automate reconnaissance and scripting. The incidents mark the first public confirmation that the tool has been weaponized at scale. Cursor's agent capabilities, originally designed to accelerate developer workflows, lowered the barrier for attackers who lack deep coding expertise. Box Group, the venture firm led by David Tisch, booked a $1 billion exit from its early investment in AnySphere, the company behind Cursor. The return marks one of the largest single-line item gains for the firm to date. Cursor's rapid adoption among developers drove the valuation step-up. Tisch has described the outcome as the largest win in the firm's history. The exit highlights how AI developer tools tied to the Musk ecosystem can generate outsized venture returns. An industry report reviewed the recurring cost structure of Falcon 9 flights after years of reuse. The study compared booster flight counts and turnaround intervals against earlier projections. No updated per-flight dollar figure was stated. The analysis arrives as SpaceX shifts more Starlink missions to Starship. The review provides context for how reuse economics have evolved since the first reused boosters flew. SpaceX's proposed Louisiana spaceport could accelerate coastal erosion and habitat loss on a rapidly vanishing shoreline, according to an analysis that cites existing wetland conversion rates and storm surge modeling. The project's 30 daily flights would add repeated acoustic and chemical loading to an already stressed ecosystem. Regulators have not yet released a final environmental impact statement that quantifies cumulative effects. Resolution would require either scaled-back flight rates or engineered mitigation that has not been demonstrated at this cadence. The analysis frames the launch cadence itself as a variable that could determine long-term ecological outcomes. Residents on an Australian island tracked a SpaceX launch and subsequent orbital operations overhead. Local observers described the event as visually striking and unusually prolonged. No payload or mission designation was confirmed in the coverage. The sighting added to a pattern of public engagement with visible SpaceX trajectories. The episode underscores growing international interest in real-time SpaceX operations visible from remote locations. Local Florida coverage highlighted continued Starlink-related operations alongside unrelated community stories. The segment referenced SpaceX infrastructure and launch cadence without new technical details. No specific mission count or hardware update was provided. The mention occurs as Florida transitions away from frequent Falcon 9 Starlink launches towards Starship-dominated cadence. Observers continue to monitor how Starlink constellation growth appears in regional media. On the AI front, xAI's latest funding round supplies additional capital for expanding training clusters that sit alongside SpaceX compute infrastructure. The round size and timing align with ongoing Colossus buildouts that rely on Starlink backhaul for distributed workloads. No direct orbital node deployment timeline was attached to the announcement. The capital infusion supports continued growth of the training infrastructure that underpins Grok model development. The decision to bring Starship V4's upper stage length to within 1 meter of the Super Heavy booster forces a re-examination of the stack's structural dynamics from first principles. A near equal height distribution shifts the combined center of mass upward during ascent, increasing the moment arm that any residual thrust vector misalignment can exploit. In vacuum, that change is manageable through gimbal authority, but the same geometry must survive the aerodynamic loads of re-entry and the precise alignment required for tower catch. The 1 meter difference is not arbitrary. It reflects a trade-off between maximizing propellant volume in the ship and preserving enough booster length for the catch arms to engage the hardpoints without colliding with the interstage. If the upper stage were shortened further, payload capacity would drop. If lengthened, the booster would need either taller arms or a redesigned catch mechanism whose mass penalty would reduce first stage performance. The render therefore encodes a specific engineering that the added bending stiffness from the taller ship can be offset by tighter manufacturing tolerances on the tank domes and stringers rather than by adding structural mass. Watching the next static fire campaign will reveal whether the revised stack frequencies remain within the control bandwidth already demonstrated on earlier vehicles. The near parity heights also change the thermal environment the interstage must manage during booster re-entry, because the ship's longer body now sits closer to the booster's base during the flip maneuver. Engineers will need to verify that the interstage thermal protection and separation systems still function when the two stages are nearly the same length. Any shift in the stack's first bending mode could require updates to the guidance filter gains that have been tuned across previous flights. From a manufacturing standpoint, the taller ship increases the surface area that must receive heat shield tiles while keeping the same tile-to-tank attachment scheme used on prior vehicles. The added length also lengthens the propellant lines that must be routed through the interstage, raising the question of whether line routing or valve placement will need redesign to maintain the same fill and drain times demonstrated on earlier ships. The 1 meter gap therefore sits at the intersection of structural dynamics, thermal protection, and ground operations, each of which must be validated before the next flight test campaign can proceed at full cadence. The render gives the community its first public view of how those constraints are being balanced in the current design iteration. A quick look at the tape shows SpaceX closing down a fraction. Before we go, the next static fire series on the revised Starship stack will show whether the updated frequencies stay inside existing control limits. That's the day at SpaceX. That's a wrap. SpaceX is trading at $140.12, down 0.3%. If you're new here, subscribe and this briefing finds you every day. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow. And before you go, this show is part of the NERA Network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets, each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen. Environmental Intelligence, the Environment and Climate Policy Brief for Canada. Find every show free at neranetwork.com. Want the written briefing with source links? Each show keeps a summaries page on neranetwork.com, scannable, dated, and free. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.